Everyone. I always bring this lovely lady up with me because she usually helps me when I forget certain things, and we seem to be a good team, so we always do it together. So, anyway, it's great to be with you again. We always come in 2-year chunks, so a lot happens in between, but we're really happy to be back again. And one of the things you were saying about the church around the world, and I find it very interesting and also wonderful to see how being followers of Christ, no matter what part of the world you're in, makes us sort of family. So it doesn't matter what church you visit in the world, you always feel, sorry, my voice is gone, but you feel like you're part of a bigger family. So we're happy to be back with this part of the family. Yeah. I think I sang too hard or something, but anyway. Yeah, so we're Daniel and Damaris, Loewen Rudgers. So there is a Loewen in there somewhere. I think some of you know the Loewens that live here in Hague, and I'm part of those. So we've been now with MAF serving in Kenya for about 18 years, so it's been quite a while. And we're happy to be back again. Yeah, that would be lovely, thanks. And we also brought Aliza and Joshua along. They're sitting with us there. And they didn't really want to come up this morning, I think. It's too intimidating. Good. I think I've sorted my voice out.
Where do I have to point this for it to keep moving?
Maybe just point over there and push the bottom one.
The bottom one?
There you
There
go.
we go.
She was pushing the wrong button, yeah.
There's 3 buttons, too many choices. So, we're serving with Mission Aviation Fellowship, and that is a global organization that uses airplanes to bring and share the gospel of Jesus to people in isolated places. So our vision is to see isolated people changed by the love of Christ. And to give you a bit of a taste of what that looks like, and what Daniel's day-to-day looks like in Kenya, we brought you a little video. And you'll see it's quite professionally made, has like very cool music, so that's a bit like an action movie. We'll explain later why.
It's actually a
trailer. I hope it's not too distracting.
Yeah, it's a trailer, so.
Thanks. And put up the volume a bit, maybe. Yeah.
This is what really excites me about flying for MAF. I really do enjoy the flying. I enjoy the aspect of, getting in the airplane and doing the SOP and flying the airplane and landing the cool airstrips. But at the end of the day, the thing that keeps me motivated and keeps me doing what I'm doing is to see people's lives transformed like what we're seeing here today. Aviation is the flying of aircraft, yeah? Aviation. We want to use aviation to bring help, hope, and healing to the places where we fly. How we do that is kind of supporting other organizations that are doing the work. The flying the aircraft, the moving the people around and all that, it's sort of the cool side of things, but the real work where we see Jesus doing so much is in exactly this kind of stuff here.
I'm not just doing work for work, I'm doing it so that someone can actually get the gospel, so that a child, a mother, or a pastoralist guy can actually hear about Christ and have their lives transformed by that message.
So, so coming soon, and we'll share a bit more at the end what that's all about. But it's also a cool story.
Go back to the presentation. What was the next slide? It's about the history of MAF. You can start even without pictures.
Sure. So the history of MAF, it actually started quite a few years ago. Maybe for those of you who don't know much, we usually share a little bit about the history before we launch into the rest of our presentation, just to give people a bit of context. And MAF started quite a few years ago. There were individuals after World War II, and they were pilots in the war, and they wanted to see their skills used for something other than flying military aircraft. And so they began MAF. And in different parts of the world, we had Betty Green in the US and Nate Saint in the US that started the MAF US side in South America. And then also in Africa, we had Stuart King. And Stuart King started MAF in Europe, in England, and he did a long journey through Africa, going to see how MAF could be used, how the aircraft could be used in that part of the world. So I'll share a little bit more later. Maybe just click and see if it's actually on. No? Sorry for making you guys jump back and forth. There we are. There they are. So on the right, you see Stuart King. And this was quite a few years ago. And in the next slide, here we go. This is now 50 years after that picture was taken. And he's holding up a picture of an aircraft, the first aircraft he flew through Africa on that original trip. And in the background, you'll see a modern PC-12 aircraft. And this was at the same airstrip in South Sudan that the original picture was taken in. And he's standing there now. I think he was 90-some years old in this picture. And it just goes to show that although much has changed in those 50 years, the vision of MAF has stayed the same. And that's very cool to see, and I'm still very happy to be a part of that. And our mission is still serving together to bring help, hope, and healing through aviation. You may have heard me say that to the school kids that came to visit the airplane. I was explaining to them why MAF is doing what we're doing.
Yes, and help, hope, and healing we try to bring on two different levels. On the one hand, on the spiritual level, that we bring the gospel of Jesus Christ and the hope that we have in him, but also on a physical level, that we don't just come to people in hunger with Bibles, but we also come with food, right? So we try to meet practical needs, physical needs, and the spiritual needs. And we do that by partnering with lots of other organizations. So MAF itself does not have projects in these different places, but we support organizations that already have a project there or want to start something. And we help them to reach these places. As you can see, we are supporting many, over 1,500 organizations worldwide. And some of them might be familiar to you, like Save the Children, Red Cross, Christopher Blind Mission. So there's lots of different ways how these organizations are supporting the people. And one of our former directors painted a very nice picture to show the role of MAF in mission overseas. And he used the story of the Good Samaritan. And he said the Samaritan saw a need, he wanted to help, and he did help, but he needed the donkey to bring this person to an inn where he could be taken care of. So he said MAF is like the donkey in mission. And I really like that picture. It shows that we are quite in the background with what we do, but we are an essential part of making the ministries happen.
And we're working in over 35 countries around the world. And if you look on the map, you'll see that most of those places are quite remote. Papua New Guinea, many places in Africa. And we're basically working in those places where it's really hard to get around. And we're operating around 130 aircraft worldwide, if you include all of the MAF aircraft. And so we're actually the largest privately owned fleet of aircraft worldwide. That means that because we're working in so many places around the world, pretty much every 4 minutes or so, there's an aircraft either taking off or landing an MAF aircraft somewhere in the world. And we're in East Africa. We've been there for quite a while. And that's right on the equator in Eastern Africa. And you may have heard a little bit in the news about Kenya recently. I'm not sure if it made it through, but Also, Kenya is struggling with political challenges at the moment. So you mentioned that, and it's also a challenge for Kenya as well. In Kenya, we're operating, well, between Kenya and South Sudan, we're operating 7 Cessna Caravans, like the one you see here. And I guess it would be a little bit like maybe like a 1-ton dually, right? It's basically that it can do anything. So you can put all your bags underneath, and you can put passengers inside. We can fit up to 13 passengers inside and also baggage underneath. And we can take all the seats out and put cargo in. So you can use it for, it's very versatile. And we're still moving fairly quick. We're doing about 160 knots, so close to 230 kilometers an hour. But we can land at really short runways with we got really strong, tough landing gear and a big turbine engine in the front. So it makes it a really useful aircraft for what we're doing. So, as I shared, 18 years now with MAF. It's gone fairly fast, surprisingly. And the last time we were here, we shared about 16 years, because that was 2 years ago. And we broke it up into chunks, and we talked about seasons. So we were kind of giving a big overview of what's happened over those seasons. And this time we wanted to focus on the last 2 years. And we wanted to focus on sort of the new opportunities that we had, but also some of the challenges that we faced, because it was quite a challenging term that we've had over the last 2 years.
Yeah, but before we get into the challenges, we just wanted to share a bit of the main joy that we have in our ministry, which is building relationships. And this is a family that shows what can happen in just a 2-year stint. They've been friends of ours for many, many years, especially the lady. We knew her before they got married. And then we were walking closely with them in the beginning of their marriage. And 2 years ago, when we came back from our home assignment here, she told me that she was pregnant. And we were all excited, and we were celebrating together. And sadly, a few months later, she lost the baby. And so we had to go through that time of grieving together. But because they had tried to have children for a long time before, they were already on an adoption process before she got pregnant. So soon after, they got a call. We have a baby that's ready. Are you ready? So just very soon after, they got this little boy. On the left, Tavi, who became their boy, and the adoption process actually went pretty fast within a year. And just a few months later, she was pregnant again, and she now had the little one last October. So within a 2-year stint, they went from being 2 to 4. And it's just beautiful to see what God does in people's lives and to be a part of that. And you can see even our kids are good friends, and we've known them for a while. You can see Eliza is a lot younger there. And it's just a joy for us to be able to walk through the highs and lows of life together and encourage one another in Christ. And they wanted to send a greeting to say thank you to our supporters. So they sent us a little video and asked us to please show it to the people who are sending us to Kenya. So we're going to do that quickly.
Hi church, we are the Mosheres.
My name is Yvonne.
And I'm David, and we have been friends with the Loewen daughters for close to 10 years.
Daniel and Damaris are godparents to our boys, our 2 boys, Tavi, who's 3 years old, and Zani, who's 6 months. In fact, Damaris was the first person to see Zani when he was born. Of course, aside from the doctors, but she was with me in theater.
We'd like to thank you for your continued support to them and sending them as missionaries here to Kenya so that they can be friends to us.
Please enjoy them while they're there with you and send them back to us soon. Thank you, guys. God bless you. Hi.
Yeah, so greetings from our friends, and thank you for sending us.
So one of the new opportunities that we had was to partner with some new organizations in Kenya. And we started partnering with Fred Hollows Cure and Red Tribe. Now, Fred Hollows is an organization that does medical eye clinics and eye surgeries. And we started chatting with them and realized that they aren't able to get to the northern parts of Kenya. So we teamed up together, and we started flights up to northeast Kenya. It's about a 3.5-hour flight to Mandera. And here in this picture you see one of the trips that we did. I brought a team of doctors up to Mandera with all of their equipment, and they ended up doing 300 eye surgeries that week. And they basically said it was like a conveyor belt, 5 minutes, next surgery, next surgery, next surgery. And that was all the equipment. We also brought all the medicine and everything else up with us. And when I picked them up at the end of the week, they were all really tired and ready to head back to Nairobi. But it's a joy to be able to do those kinds of trips because you see the impact very quickly. Another thing to note about northeastern Kenya, most people that came for those surgeries were from Somalia, and almost no Christian influence in Somalia at all. So this is a huge opportunity for the gospel to spread into Somalia, in a part of Kenya, coming from Kenya into Somalia. So something to be praying about as well. This is the Cure team. We regularly throughout the year do trips with Cure up to northern Kenya, and we'll take a team of doctors. Yes, they do orthopedic pediatric care, so for children, mostly bone-related issues. And we take a team of doctors, physiotherapists, and even a pastor comes with us as well. And it's sort of holistic treatment. So here you can see one of the physiotherapists working with one of the children. And we keep going back to the same places so that the kids can get sort of continuity in their care. Otherwise, they wouldn't receive any care in those parts of Kenya. And the entire team that I fly are all either Kenyan or from other African countries, professionals that have dedicated their time to serve with Cure. So it's really exciting to be able to work together with them. And the third ministry we wanted to highlight was Red Tribe. I think we may have mentioned Red Tribe before, but they do such amazing work in southwestern Kenya in a Maasai community. Here you can see they were showing us the clinic, and at the bottom you can see the slogan they have there, "We treat, but God heals." This is one of the only clinics in the entire area there, and one of the only places in the entire region there that has like consistent medicine that they can give out. And so many people come there for treatment. And also a lot of women come to deliver their babies. So it's a really important place. But they don't only have the clinic, they also do a bead project. And it was started by the first missionaries that came there. And she's an artist and does amazing stuff. So together with the Maasai ladies, they've developed some amazing jewelry which is sold in Europe. And that money then they can invest back into the project, which is really good. They also have a school. It's now considered the best school in the whole county. The kids do really, really well. And here we had handed out some of the aviation or the MAF little aircraft for them to play with, little toys. So they also have a water project. They pipe water through gravity from a spring, a natural spring, to the community. And it's providing water for thousands of people. And the rate of dysentery and other problems for children has gone way down. So the kids are much healthier. And this is Pelua. So the original missionaries I mentioned, they've actually gone back to England, and they're doing support raising, and they've handed over to Pelua. And he's doing a wonderful job running the programs there in Kenya. And we partner quite a bit with them, flying teams that are visiting back and forth, and supplies and different things. So we've become good friends.
Another great opportunity this last term was to visit Juba. Now, some of you might be surprised why I mention Juba. It is the capital of South Sudan, but our Kenya program is actually a double program. So until a few years ago, there was civil war in South Sudan, and so we actually flew into South Sudan from Kenya. So our team was the South Sudan team, actually. And when about 10 years ago they became independent, we started setting up a team within Juba. So we now have 10 or more families that live in Juba and serve there and fly within the country, but we're still very closely connected because all the planes are registered in Kenya, all the training happens in Kenya, all the paperwork happens in Kenya, and they also come on R&R every 3 months. So every family comes down to Nairobi to our lovely green compound because it's very dry up there. and they get some rest and relaxation. So we all know the team up there very well, and our kids are friends with all of them, and we've always been wanting to go. Daniel gets to go often because he's also in charge of the pilots up there. But as a family, we were never able to go. And last year, we were invited to come. We went along on one of his trips, and that was a real special treat for all of us to just see the everyday life of the team up there. So I'll just show you a few pictures. Daniel was flying, but he had some cool co-pilots. One was on the picture, and then Joshua also got his turn. This is the airport in Juba. So we have 5 airplanes up there, right? Yeah. And here you can see how you can cool off when it's really, really hot. So there's no ACs around. When we went for an outing, they had these ice packs in a cool box in the car. So when we came back in the car, every kid got a cool box to cool off because it was very, very hot. Our children also got to go to school with the kids there, which was quite an experience because it's a small missionary-based school with about 20, 25 kids. And our children in Nairobi go to a big international school of 300 children. So this was a nice thing for them to see how their friends go to school. And we got to see the Nile, which flows through Juba. So it was a special time for us. Another opportunity for me personally was that I got a job offer at the beginning of last term. I studied special education for children with visual impairment, before we got married. And I haven't been able to work in that field, not professionally, but most of you know about our daughter Samara, who had lots of special needs, and we went out with her lots. I had so many therapies that I went to and learned a lot through that as well. And an optometrist who knows me from those times offered if I could help her start an early intervention program for children with visual impairment. So I was very excited and started getting ready for that, did some online studies and started with paperwork to get permits and stuff. So that kept me busy as well. Yes, and I got to go to a little project where they have lots of different kids with different impairments, but I found the ones with visual impairment and got to help a little bit to advise the moms and just encourage them on their way, which is very difficult because there's almost no help. So yeah, these were some very great encounters.
One of the joys of living in Kenya is our church there, One Tribe Church. It's a big mix of different cultures all coming together, and we're very happy to be a part of that community. And over the years, I've gotten more and more involved in the church, and they've invited me to become one of the elders. It's an elder-led church, and we're excited about that opportunity. For me, it'll be challenging because they may ask me to come up front and preach sometimes, and I'll have to get over some of my fear of being in the front. But yeah, it's something new, and I'm excited about that as well.
Yeah, and I got to go to a conference in South Africa last year and led an Easter project, which I wanted to show you a few pictures about. So this was our team going to South Africa. We were about 5 different nationalities. Daniel had to work, that's why he couldn't be part of it. But I went with some friends, and it was really cold. When we arrived, it was in July, it was about 0 degrees, and they had snow. So all of our Kenyan friends were quite overwhelmed. But we went there to help with the worship ministry. I lead the worship ministry at our church, and we coupled up with different churches of our church family called Advance. And this was a church from Madagascar that we teamed up with and just got to encourage one another in the things that we do and the things that God has put in our heart. So it was a really great opportunity. Another project that I've really thrown myself into the last few years is to make Easter a big deal. Because usually Christmas is a big deal, and there's Christmas concerts and Christmas things everywhere. And I realized we don't need another Christmas concert, but there's nothing done for Easter. And so I was like, actually, as Christians, Easter is our bigger celebration, so let's make it a big deal. And the last 2 years were quite difficult, or the former 2 years, and then last year, everything came together. And it was a really beautiful event. We had a bunch of songs. We had drama, some done by adults, but also our teens participated and did some drama. And we had an entire Easter market. And that was because we wanted to reach the unchurched people. So it was an outreach event. It was a big market outside. We had coffee and all kinds of stands. And through that, invited people to come. And then they got to see the whole program and got to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. So it was a successful event and just showed how God shows his faithfulness through lots of fun helpers that we had.
So, new opportunities, but also challenges. And I think one of the biggest challenges, and I think many of you do read our reports, was that I was pretty much on my own as the only pilot in the Kenya program for the last year and a half, 2 years. And that was hard because it meant that I was quite busy with the flying, and I wasn't able to do many of my other roles that I have as head of operations. So I lost good friends, the colleagues that went. They went back to New Zealand and Australia, and the pressure to fly became quite intense. So if there was a flight booked, I had to do it. And it meant that I had to stay fit, I had to stay healthy, and I wasn't able to always be around for the weekends. Just meant that our family time was also really hampered. So our routine became a challenge. I was often gone on weekends, or I would have to take days off in the middle of the week. So our rest, work, family balance became a bit messed up, which was a challenge for sure.
My job opportunity didn't work out the way that I had hoped for it to develop. So actually just a few weeks before we left for home assignment, the lady who offered me the job kind of retracted her offer because it got too complicated. There was too much involved in getting the paperwork done. And the other big problem is that the government has hiked up all the prices of permits. And so for me to get a work permit would have been about $2,000 per year, which we thought, okay, we can try to find that. But now they've hiked it up to $5,000 a year. And so you're like, okay, that's not going to happen soon. So that has been put on pause, and it was quite disappointing, but I do believe that God has something in store, because he got me prepared for something, so we'll see where he leads. The other thing, as I had mentioned, was that I got pretty discouraged and fatigued at church because I'm very involved in different projects and in the worship ministry, and there was just very little help and few volunteers, and that just made me really tired, and I actually didn't want to do another Easter project this year. I was like, I tried 2 years and it didn't work so well, so I was a bit at that low point.
Financially, the last 2 years were also a bit of a challenge for us. Our support, I think it might have been related to COVID, but about 2 years ago our support dipped quite a bit, and MAF put a fair amount of pressure on us. You guys need to get it back up again, and that increased stress levels a bit for us as we were preparing for our home assignment. And the other thing was our vehicle was getting a bit old, the one that we have, and we realized we're going to have to get something new. Well, not new, but newer. And so we began looking at how that would work financially. And vehicle prices in Kenya are just very high. So we thought that's going to be a challenge. I don't know if we'll manage. So I think when we were thinking about the presentation and the challenges, new opportunities and challenges, one of the things that we realized is that we felt a bit empty, kind of like these jars, or a bit low on energy. And I guess we could have just summarized it as limited resources. And we were thinking, we felt a bit like an empty jar. I think maybe sometimes some of you maybe have felt that way as well. We were just low on energy. We were low on time. We didn't have the time to get things done. We didn't have the people we needed to get things done. The pilots didn't arrive on time. We just didn't have the pilots to cover when I needed to rest. And the finances were a bit tight. And that just, yeah, it made the last 2 years a bit dry, I would say.
Yeah, and as we were preparing, we thought of a sermon. We remembered a sermon that our church had last year, and it was about Elijah and the widow. And we just wanted to share a few points of that sermon with you as an encouragement, because I think it's not something that is just unique to us, that we have seasons of dryness and seasons of feeling empty. And so we wanted to share this to just encourage any of you who might also be in a season like that. Most of you will know the story. There was a famine in the land, and God said to Elijah, "Go out and find the widow and ask her for some bread." And so he does that, but the poor widow says, "I just have a little bit of oil left and a little bit of flour. I'm baking my last loaf of bread that I'm going to share with my boy, and then we're just waiting to die." And Elijah asks her, "Make me some bread first, and then for you." And if you think about it, it's quite a rude request. It seems very egocentric, right? But because God asked him to do that, he did. And because this widow had heard of the power of the God of Elijah and the God of Israel, she responded in obedience, and she made that loaf for him. And the result was that God blessed her, that God multiplied, and that he provided, and that her oil and her flour did not run out, even though it looked like it would. And the main point of the sermon that was preached last year was that what we have is enough, because we have a God who can multiply and a God who can make it enough, even when it feels like it's very little. And the challenge to us is to give the little that we have, even if it feels like nothing, because God will use it and can use it for his glory. And he uses it far beyond what we can imagine. I'm sure this widow had no clue that her bread and keeping Elijah alive was so instrumental for the story of God's people and for the redemption plan, right, of Jesus. And so our challenge to ourselves and to all of us is to look at what is in our hand, even if it looks like very little. But what does God want to use that for? How does he want to use me in the surroundings that I'm in? And especially if he's given me a calling that I know this is what he wants me to do, but I'm just not up for it right now. Let us look what's in our hand. And even sometimes if it looks like a completely empty hand, an empty glass, let's offer it to him, because his promise is that he will not let us run dry, and that he replenishes. It's like a fountain where the water keeps coming and pouring out and coming and pouring out. And yeah, we can see that in many places in the Bible where God gives us these promises. And we were thinking of Psalm 23, which is one that many of us have in our hearts and our minds. But it says, he restores my soul and my cup overflows. And it's not in a time of plenty that he talks about that, but he talks about the valley and about the enemies around me. But even in that situation, my cup overflows, because the Lord will give me what I need. And so if we can respond in obedience to keep just pouring out what we have and trusting that God will refill us, then he will not let us run dry. So even though we feel a bit like the empty jars and are a bit tired at the end of this term, we can really see God's faithfulness and the way in that he faithfully refilled us and gave us what we needed.
Yeah, we can see God's faithfulness in providing pilots. We have a family now that's moved to Kenya. They came in January, and both are pilots. They were flying with KLM. I think Ruth, she was flying a Dreamliner, and Joost was flying a 737 for KLM, and they've now decided that they want to fly for MAF. And they are now in Kenya, and we're hoping and praying that Joost gets his work permit. That's the last step that needs to happen. It's been delayed, so you can pray for his work permit to come through. I would really like it to come through before I go back. Otherwise, it's going to be back to a busy schedule again. But that's a huge answer to prayer. And Yost wasn't quite ready to fly on his own, and we didn't know how we would manage because I was leaving and nobody was ready to fly yet. And then Amos was there. And Amos is a Kenyan pilot, and he came into my office one day and said, he told me his story. He's very passionate about missions. He has a very qualified pilot, and he's joined us. So I asked if he could come and help us out in Kenya for a few months, and that's what he's done for the last few months while I've been gone, and he's going to head off with his family to Liberia and fly for MAF in Liberia. So I was very happy to have Amos around, another answer to prayer. And yeah.
Yeah, in the church work, as I said, this year God just really encouraged me to not look at just who I have to help or what past experience have been, but as I said, the calling and what he has put in my heart. And so we went forward and we prayed for people, and we got a bunch of new helpers and volunteers, and God was faithful, and we had a really great Easter event.
And with the finances, God was amazing there as well. He brought new supporters and brought our finances back up. And it ebbs and flows a bit, but we're just really grateful to see how God has provided in that regard as well. And also with the vehicle, we have had wonderful support from our friends and supporters to raise money to help us pay for a vehicle now. And we actually were able to buy one before we left. So it's with the mechanic. He's working on it. And in Kenya, when you buy a used car, it means you're going to have to fix it first before you can drive it. So, but it's newer than the last one. It's a 2005, so we're into the 2000s. So, but anyway, thanks to you as well here who have helped us with that. We're really grateful for that. And last year was the first year that I had a nasty back experience. It was this year, yeah. I was sleeping, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I couldn't move, and I didn't know what was wrong. And I woke up in the morning and thought, well, as long as I can sit, then I'll be able to fly today. And I tried to sit on the edge of the bed, and that wasn't, I couldn't do it. So we actually had to cancel the Cure Safari that we had planned. It was a 3-day safari. All of the families had been mobilized. All the kids were ready to come for the clinic. And I was really frustrated that I couldn't move. And there was no way to get another pilot to come and help out. So we thought we had to cancel, but we decided to postpone. And I remember feeling discouraged and wondering why that had to happen. And interestingly, God was able to work that in an amazing way. So the little trailer you saw was done by 2 German filmmakers. And they contacted us at some point last year and said, hey, we'd love to come and do a 3-part miniseries on MAF. And we said, okay. So they invested all their time for free and everything and came on over. And they put this program together, but they needed good flights to go along on. And it happened that Cure Safari that we had postponed was exactly at that time when they came. So it worked out perfectly so that they could come along, and we could show them the ministry that we're doing with Cure. So it's amazing how God can use even something like a messed up back and somehow make it work out. So, yeah, it was cool. And, the documentary is apparently coming out. We are not sure exactly where it's going to be. Sometimes they post on Amazon or on Apple TV. We're not sure, but we will let you guys know once it's out there. And, yeah, it does show mostly just Kenya, and they seem to fixate a lot on me, so you'll see a bit of me as well. So.
You'll learn a lot of things about his daily activities. I even learned things I didn't know that he does. Yeah.
So I think 18 years with MAF, and we just feel very blessed to still be serving with them, even though we've had challenges along the way, especially the last 2 years. But we can see that it's still a ministry that God is pouring a lot of energy into and using it to support other organizations and do work in very remote places. And we're happy to be a small part of that. And yeah, even though we're a bit tired, we've had time now to get a bit of energy while we've been in Germany and Canada, and we're ready to start another term. So if some of you maybe don't know much about MAF yet, or you're interested in hearing a bit more, we'll be in the back afterwards. We've got some cards and some other materials here. And if you are interested in supporting us, you can also grab one of these prayer cards, and it gives details in the back. Yeah. And we also have prayer letters that we send out. We don't inundate your box with too many. It's like 4 a year. So we try to keep it at a good level. But we do also require a lot of prayer. And as I mentioned, we can be praying for Kenya. The political situation there is a bit tense. The government has been raising taxes. There's been a lot of corruption. So the common people see very nice cars driving around, government officials, and they're barely making ends meet trying to buy just the basic essentials. And especially the younger generation has said enough is enough, and they were out on the street demonstrating. So over 39 people were killed in demonstrations with the police, so you can pray that the government is wise and starts listening to some of the things that are being said. Yeah. And for us as well, thank you very much for the financial support. And as I said, it ebbs and flows, so it's another area of prayer for us that you can pray for. And another thing where you can connect with us or support us is a visit. We had a family come from Canada this year. Some of our supporters came to visit us, and I think if you talk to them, they probably highly recommend it. I don't know. They seem to enjoy themselves. So, but definitely, it's one way to come and see what we're doing. So be very welcome, feel welcome to come visit us in Kenya. So we have our prayer cards. You can grab them in the back. We also have a place where you can sign up for our letters if you would like to receive them. And we want to say thank you again for your time and for this opportunity to share.